marriage conference that we did, Ben and I had the opportunity to train this new couple. And they're from Puerto Rican descent. They grew up in the hood of Chicago. And she's this Latina and has this awesome accent and just fiery. And they share their story. And their story was that they met in high school. And they went to high school together, graduated from high school. She gets pregnant, not by him, and has a child. Then they come together and they live together. And then she becomes a believer. But when she becomes a believer, she's 7 months pregnant at the time with his child, with Tony's child. Her name is Limari, and his name is Tony. And she becomes a believer. She's 7 months pregnant. And she tells Tony, I'm not sleeping with you unless you marry me. It's not going to happen. And he's like, what the? I'm going to go talk to that pastor. This is crazy. You're already carrying my child. That's not going to happen. So he heads down to the church and plans to just totally chew out that pastor. Like, what are you doing, messing with my life? And while he's there, he experiences church like he's never had before in this totally loving, freeing way. And in his journey, he gives his life to Christ. Well, 3 years later, they've been walking with the Lord, and 3 years later, Tony has an affair. And she finds out, and she's totally angry, of course, totally disappointed, and like, what do you think you're doing? And he's, in his sin, I think he didn't stay with the gal, but she goes to the pastor and says, you know what? I have every right to divorce him, right? I have every biblical right to end this marriage. And the pastor says, yep, you absolutely do. You can divorce him or you can grace him. It's your choice. What do you want to do? It's like, dang, she hears that and feels like God is calling me to grace him. And what that looks like is that for the next 4 years, she is struggling with forgiving him. And he's up and down, and one day they're at a park, and there's a function, and she's walking away, and she's like, Lord, you say you are the good shepherd. And I know that as a good shepherd, there are times you take a sheep and you break its leg so that you can put the little lamb over your neck and nurse it back to health while it is on you. And it can get used to being with you. Lord, you need to break Tony's legs. You need to break him so that he will come back to you. She said, not 5 minutes later, this woman comes running up to her and says, Tony's been hurt. And Limari goes, he broke his leg, didn't he? And she goes, yeah, he did. The story is he was playing baseball, and he ran into a 90-pound kid, and people said it's like he ran into a wall, crumbled, and shattered his kneecap. She comes walking over to him and goes, you're wrestling with God. And he goes, yeah, and you know who wins. So for the next 10 months, surgery, he's in a cast. She is waiting on the man who's betrayed her and serving him. And she's so out there. She's like, I'm wiping his butt. I'm having to take care of this guy who betrayed me. Kids are helping out. 10 months goes by. They realize the surgery didn't work. Another 8 months in a cast. And she said, God was just breaking me and showing me about my own sin in our marriage. So one night he's watching a Jesus kind of movie, and it gets to the part about Judas. And he says, he's like, I'm Judas. I am Judas to God, and I am Judas to this family. This family would be better without me. I need to be gone. So he goes to the bathroom to hang himself. And in the process, he can't. It doesn't work. I don't know why he didn't know how to do a noose. He falls to the ground. He's in this cast. He's laying in the bathroom floor, and she comes walking in on him. And he's sobbing. He's like, I am Judas to this family. You all would be so much better without me. And Lamari goes, no, Tony, you are not Judas. You're Peter. God is going to bring you back. And that was 3 years into their marriage. And 17 years now later, they're speaking at marriage conferences because they had the hope in the resurrection, that Jesus is alive and his power is alive and well. And his power can bring a dead man back to life after 3 years. And his power can change my stone heart into flesh so I can respond to him. That is what the resurrection is. That's what it means that we believe in the resurrection. You know, it's interesting. We celebrate Easter in a couple weeks. And, there are only two Gospels that talk about Jesus' birth, Luke and Matthew. But every Gospel talks about Easter. Every Gospel does. And so does the rest of the New Testament. We spend a good 2 months preparing for Christmas. I'll tell you, I don't spend that kind of time preparing for Easter at all. And yet it's the one holiday that Jesus said, I want you to remember my death and my resurrection. I want to challenge you all to do Easter differently. Let's get rid of the chickies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're not bad at all, but let's celebrate it like someone came back to life. Like, what would that look like if we really celebrated it as someone came back to life? Jesus did. I tell you, if it was one of you and I was throwing a party for you because you came back to life, it wouldn't be meek and mild, okay? It wouldn't be like that at all. I think we need to take Easter back. Let me close with a story for you all. It's a story about a man named Paderewski. I've shared this before with you all. He was a pianist in Poland, and he was also in government. He was a statesman, and he had a concert. He was doing a concert, and the story says, wishing to encourage her young son's progress on the piano, a mother took her boy to a Paderewski concert. After they were seated, the mother spotted a friend in the audience and walked down the aisle to greet her. Seizing the opportunity to explore the wonders of the concert hall, the little boy rose and eventually explored his way through a door marked "No Admittance." When the house lights dimmed and the concert was about to begin, the mother returned to her seat and discovered that the child was missing. Suddenly, the curtains parted and spotlights focused on the impressive Steinway on the stage. In horror, the mother saw her little boy sitting at the keyboard, innocently picking out chopsticks. At that moment, the great piano master made his entrance. He quickly moved to the piano and whispered in the boy's ear, "Don't quit. Keep playing." Then leaning over, Paderewski reached down with his left hand and began filling in a bass part. Soon his right arm reached around to the other side of the child, and he added a running obligato. Together, the old master and the young novice transformed a frightening situation into a wonderfully creative experience, and the audience was totally mesmerized. Well, that's our story, isn't it? We've been given this life and we're plunking out chopsticks. We're trying to figure out how to do it. There's lots of mistakes we make along the way. And Jesus comes alongside, comes around us and says, "Don't quit. I am here. Keep playing. Yes, you're making mistakes, but I know how to make it a masterpiece. I know how to make this beautiful. My Spirit lives in you, and I will help you make this a masterpiece. But don't quit. Take courage. Don't give up." Let me pray. Jesus, thank you that you are here even when we don't see you, and even when we're trying to see you, Lord. And and in your silent, Lord, help us to remember you will never forsake us, and you love us desperately. Lord Jesus, help us to take courage in these truths. And I pray, Jesus, that we would just have great conversations. I pray we could bring our shame into the light and get healing from you and from each other. We all have so many things that we want to hide, and yet you want to make a masterpiece of those very things. Thank you for this time, Jesus. Amen. Enjoy your groups.